Hey, this is Dave Douglas. This is the Greenleaf Music Podcast, A Noise from the Deep, and that's the music of Itamar Borochov, trumpet player, singer, composer. This is his new album on Greenleaf. It's called Arba, and we'll be talking about that album and some of his earlier work and other inspirations. Itamar is going to be touring all around the world this fall, so go hear him if you can. And come join us at Greenleaf Music to subscribe and get everything that we do, all of these episodes and sheet music and more. It's greenleafmusic.com. Thanks so much for listening. So here's my conversation with Itamar Borochov. Itamar, thank you so much for agreeing to join me to talk about this music.
Thank you for having me, Dave. I'm very excited.
Well, we're coordinating some time zones here, so everyone should
Yeah,
know that we're not exactly in the same part of the planet. But I think, with the wonders of Zoom and you being able to make the time, I really appreciate it. We listened to a little bit of, I guess it's the first track on your Greenleaf Music release, which is called Arba, and the track is Abraham. And I guess the first thing I want to ask you, because I know a lot of people will wonder right away. I mean, you have this beautiful, airy sound, but you're also playing a quarter tone trumpet. And I guess you've had that for 4 or 5 years. But what was sort of the creative reason that you decided to use this instrument? How did that come to you?
I think it's two things. One is that I was so music with quarter tones. Music from the Middle East is the music that I grew up around. And at first, it was more, I guess, sort of in a cultural, traditional setting. This is how we sung at the synagogue or on a Shabbat table on holidays, etc. And later on, it's also something that I really studied and playing was, involved in, but it's not suited to play a trumpet this way. So I was playing on my regular trumpet. I was finding ways to play quarter tones on the trumpet, and that involved like using false fingerings and doing some adjustments with the embouchure, etc. And a part of that is nice because it feels a little bit like a novelty, like, hey, I can do this thing on a trumpet that you're not supposed to do.
That's exactly what Ibrahim Malouf showed me some of those tricks with my
Hmm.
B flat trumpet of the tuning slides and some false fingerings and of course, I'm not trained in this, so my ear, I'm not hearing those intervals quite exactly like you're supposed to hear them naturally. But also, it felt like what you just said. I felt like, okay, here, I can play in this scale with the quarter
Yeah.
tones. So then you went and got the horn.
And then I went to get the horn because I kind of said, like, well, actually the idea of this music is for it to be natural. It's a very natural scale. It's actually closer to the natural harmonic scale. It's not supposed to be like when you hit that note, it's not supposed to be like doing something extra special or more difficult to do. It was very limiting. So that's a part of it. And another part of it is it just I really something with me. I hope to have like a custom made horn at some point. I said I want to like have that experience of having a horn built for me and my measurements, like a tailor-made suit that I'll have nobody else to blame but myself if I suck. And then I said, well, if I'll do that, let me just, I'm probably going to do that only once. So let me get a trumpet with a fourth valve so I can also play quarter tones when I want. And that's kind of how it came about. The maker is Dave Monette.
Oh, so did you commission him to especially make the horn for you?
Yeah, it was. I was there once while I was on the road and I passed by. I said, let me go um, to the shop and see, try out this equipment. And I did, and I tried some different mouth. He wasn't there then. And I tried some mouthpieces. I ended up starting to play one of the mouthpieces. Um, And I said, I have this idea to build a trumpet with a fourth valve. And they said, well, we'll see if Dave will be interested in doing something like that because he, it's a different thing. And I think he wouldn't want to build a horn if he doesn't know it's going to be very good.
Right, right.
And it took some time. I think it took several years. I'm not sure. I wasn't really ready to do that. And said, even if it happens, um, there's a waiting list that takes a long time. And I honestly don't exactly remember, but somehow this idea rekindled, and there was some sort of maybe I talked to them. I think I made you know what? Maybe it was around a time that I got one, like a flugelhorn mouthpiece from them. Anyway, one thing led to another, and Dave Monet, that is, listened to a recording of mine and called me and said, I just got a call, and it went something like, "Hello, Itamar, this is Dave Monet. I listened to your music and I want to build you a quarter tone trumpet. I think I know what you're trying to do, and I can get started tomorrow."
That's one of those calls where you think it's your friend playing a trick on you, right?
Yeah. And I just said, okay, let's do it.
Wow. So he must have researched the other existing horns that have that capability, right? I mean, there are some other makers who've done stuff. I didn't know that Dave Monet built this particular one for you.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know what he went into, but we certainly talked about, how to do it, what to do. We talked about tuning a bunch, and just about how to position the fourth valve. I have so it's offset to the right because I mainly use like um with my right finger, with my right hand, with my pinky finger. And I know, for instance, you mentioned Ibrahim Alouf. He has one but he uses his left finger off to the left. Um, so stuff like that. But at the end of the day, he really knew I don't know how to design a trumpet. I just hope you know how to blow into one. And
Apparently, quite well, actually.
thank you.
But
Um,
so to move away from the equipment side of it, I mean, I think that the Makam material really comes from the hearing and from the voice. And you're not going to play that the way you do, even with that trumpet, unless you're really hearing it in your inner ear. Is that correct?
yeah, that's very true. I mean, that was the interesting thing also about kind of, because there's, in and this is the way I personally see it. Within this tradition, there's a lot of the ornamentation and the way you approach things are instrument specific. So the way a person would play an ornament on the oud, for instance, is different than a way the person would sing, or a person would play a violin. And each one of those has a very kind of specific, strong tradition. One of the masters, I guess, or the people that I studied with growing up, was a qanun player. And sometimes it was like, no, do it exactly like this. And I felt it wasn't necessarily the right thing to do on a trumpet, but there was no lineage of playing a trumpet this way. So I had to kind of find for myself, what will I model myself after? And I did it mainly modeling after the voice, the human
Yeah.
voice.
I feel like I can hear that in your playing. And then hearing you sing on this record and
Yeah.
hearing the connection that you make. It's funny to hear you say that that musical material was part of your upbringing and that you sang it at various gatherings. I wouldn't have thought it would come from that music, but also there are so many different resources and scales, and every tradition, it would seem, there would be different inflections and different intonations. Is that the case?
Yeah, very much so. I mean, this is a music that, we call it from the greater Middle East, but in essence, it's almost half the world. This is from basically West China all the way to North Africa. So this is a musical language that is shared by such a big part of the world, and is different in different traditions. And I guess, generally speaking, you can divide it maybe to the sort of the Egyptian school,
Mm-hmm.
there's the Turkish school, there's the Persian school. School is not even the right word, but I don't have the right words right now.
Lineage
Um,
or tradition or, yeah.
yes, it's a system. It's a real
Okay.
system.
Yeah, that's a
And
good word.
and they differ, but they have commonalities.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So if you know one, you can understand a lot of the others. And then there are things that you don't understand. Then there's some cross pollinations,
Yeah,
you know.
sure. But then also, what you're making is very much your own music. It sounds to me, you correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds to me like your goal is to say what you have to say from your perspective as a human being on the planet, not worrying as much about which lineage and which system you're working in.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think for me, it's sort of I really love and respect traditions. And I know, like, if I'm in a traditional setting of any sorts or folkloric tradition, I would want to be as close to that as possible.
Mm,
And that's true if I play in a, you know, traditional Middle Eastern music, I'm not going to play a Freddie Hubbard lick. Um, and at the same token, if you know, this is probably earlier on, this is not something that I've done in recent years, but you know, if I was on a what people call like a trad jazz gig, I wouldn't play like a Macam lick.
oh, see, I would love to hear you do that, but yeah, I hear what
Yeah.
you're saying.
You know, so we go through these things, and you know, we've
Sure.
all because jazz itself is a company is you know is very rooted in folkloric music and different ones at that, and especially you know us that I'm saying us like you know we're not, I guess all of us, yeah, musicians. You know, we study the traditions, but then at the end of the day, like when it's time for me to make my own records, I, as you said, I kind of don't think about what it is. I kind of do it, and it's a combination of all of that things because then I'm just kind of telling a personal story.
Yeah. I mean, a separate observation I would make also about your playing that I mean that's it's right up front, it's right in your face, but it's the way that you use a very airy sound. You know, there's a lot of air in your tone. And it seems to me like that's something that you do intentionally. And it fits with this other material that you're using. And again, it becomes yours. It's not becoming part of some system. I mean, certainly there are some trumpet players who use this sort of airy voice that you're using, but it feels like something you developed as part of your own sound.
Yeah. You know, that's interesting. I mean, I definitely have, and I think I definitely I think about sound and a lot. And it's something I developed, I guess. But then at the end, on the other hand, like end of that spectrum, I also can't escape it. And that's something I realized that we just kind of have our sound also. As much as we develop it, like sometimes I think I'm trying to sound very punchy, and then when I hear it, it's like, yo, this is very airy.
So, do you, I mean, beyond just the idea of the breath and the air, did you do any special work to try to develop that sound, or did that just happen naturally, like you're saying?
Um, I did a lot of work to develop that sound, but it's hard to describe in a methodical way. I think it's more kind of like, and I'm sure you know this so well, it's more like experimenting a lot. And as you go along, saying like, do I like this sound and or do I like this sound less? And how can I play more with that sound that I like and gravitate towards? And also have it that it feels good. There's something about the feeling of like the playability, maybe of like it feels good to play this way versus that way. And it's so many different things. And that's kind of the way I don't teach much, but when I do, that's kind of I think what I give to students most is like this idea of experiment, you know, go into the lab and conduct as many experiments as you want until, and along the way, you'll find the stuff that you like more and the stuff that you like less.
Mm, wow. There's this piece called Dirge that's so beautiful. So I'll just play some of that. And of course, all of the things that we're talking about are present in this piece as well. So that's dirge. And I can't help feeling like the compositional material, there's something that feels very familiar about it. I don't know
Mm.
why. Maybe it's because I've listened to this record a few times and I'm remembering that. But it's just, I guess it leads me to want to ask you, compositionally, using the instrument that you've developed and the way that you use it sonically, is that going into your writing approach? And when you're, this kind of this particular album of music, let's say, because every project we all do is different, but where you're at right now with this album Arba, how do you begin to conceive of a piece like this?
Mm. This piece started as a part of a larger work that I wrote for my quartet with a string orchestra. It was a commission I had for the Brazos Valley Symphony Orchestra. Um, and so this was a movement inside that larger piece that I called Emergence Suite. And that was, I think that sort of theme wanted to continue having a life of its own without the orchestra. And we started to play it at shows, and then it found its way into the record.
So you wrote this a while ago, then, a few years ago.
Yeah, this was during the pandemic. So we performed it, I think it was April 2021, I want to say. Yeah.
I mean, the way that you bring the band members into it, it's really beautiful. And I guess the question I was asking is kind of silly because we've already talked about making all this vocabulary your own and making it feel natural. So you would write the same way you would write anything else, except you know you're going to be using these kinds of melodic materials and these kinds of intervals and shapes. But you bring Rob Clearfield into it in the case of this track in a really interesting way. I've heard Rob for many years, and he sounds fantastic on this.
Yeah. Rob, for me, is he's such a, I feel, a musical partner of mine. He's been in the band for several years now, and I feel like we really developed this sort of, I don't know even how to, it's a type of a fellowship, I guess. Um, but he's just a remarkable musician. And one really cool thing about him is that, so we played this piece with the orchestra. Rob knew what the strings were doing, and it's not like he was mimicking the string part as he was playing, but that was, I think, I never asked him. It informed also kind of how he approached um, orchestrating the piano, playing, once we started to play this without the orchestra. And I think he took it a step further, but I kind of see like he's the kind of musician that knows how to do that also. Like he has this approach to the piano that he just a little bit like a yeah, like an orchestrator or a producer. He kind of knows what's needed on an emotional level. And we talk also, he kind of understands the sort of scale approach. So for instance, and this is maybe answering like a bit of your original question, um, when I was writing this piece, um, a lot of this larger work was centered around Makam Nawa. It's a specific minor Makam that's very spiritual, repetitive type of nature, hence also the name dirge. And it's actually a Makam that doesn't have many variations. It's quite a mantra-ish type of mood. Uh, and I was looking into all types of different ways to um, have that live with the Western instruments and the orchestra specifically. And the way one of the ways that I did that is trying to put some of the let's call it oh my gosh, this is hard to explain. I don't know what I've gotten myself into trying to answer this question, but
Well, you did answer the call, so yeah, too late now.
yeah. So it's some one of the things that set a makam apart from just a scale is that other things affect it, such as the way it develops and unfolds, the mood it creates, where is sort of the tension and release or dominant and tonic within the scale and the way that you construct your lines, and also the form is a part of the makam, the movements and the form. So I was trying to take some of the form ideas and put them into the composition, if that makes any sense. And kind of take the philosophy maybe of the makam into the composition.
That's great. And like you said, that's something that Rob was clearly aware of and playing to, as was Rick Rosato on bass and Jay Sawyer on drums.
Most definitely, yes.
Just really sounds like a great team. And I hope that you're all out there, playing live shows together now that we're congregating in rooms again.
Yeah.
It's great. I wanted to play another track just to feature your voice a little bit because we didn't really talk about that. So, how do you pronounce this? Is it Yasabi?
Yes, Sahbi. Yes.
Yasabi. Great. You know, I don't think I had heard you sing before I heard this record, and it's so resonant of so many great vocalists who I'm not even going to name. You feel like you developed your voice the same way that you developed as a trumpet player?
I don't think so. I really didn't put in the same, honestly, if I'm being honest, I didn't put the same amount of work into my voice as I did to the trumpet. So the voice is kind of something that this is really I haven't been singing on stages and definitely not on records. So it's kind of something that, yeah, as I said, it kind of happened naturally. I felt like I wanted to, yeah, some of these melodies could have be expressed better through a voice than a trumpet, I guess. As a composer, I wanted that element or another sort of lead melody line. And as a performer, maybe I actually don't know what brought me to do it.
Well, but it's okay. Permit me to armchair analyze that. It sounds to me like your trumpet playing is going a certain way. And I've heard you for some years, not that long, but it's developed into this incredible amalgamation of all of these different feelings and shapes. And so when I heard this vocal track, I just felt like that was a further extension of what you're doing with the trumpet. Just like naturally the blowing into the horn, and then you remove the horn, and then what do you have? The voice.
Yeah, yeah. I thank you for that. I feel this way too. It feels natural and it feels in a way similar. So it's not that I don't practice singing, but really not as much as I do, playing trumpet. Playing
Right.
trumpet is very hard, and singing is also very hard. Maybe if I had to sing or to the same extent that I'm playing trumpet, maybe, you know, I should practice that more. But if I'm being honest, I'm not. It remains more of a natural thing.
Well, it sounds like you sing well enough to do the music that you want to do, to express what you need to say, in the case of this piece, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Flipping the question to the opposite side of the coin, we talked a little bit about trumpet players who've influenced us. And I think you and I both feel like our influences as young musicians weren't necessarily trumpet players, that both of us love tenor sax players and players of other instruments. And we both have a few main trumpet inspirations that wouldn't surprise anyone.
Yeah.
But my question then is, when you go to sing, do you feel like that same inner voice is what's guiding you, those inspirations?
I have to say no. To the extent of because when I sing, I really don't think about John Coltrane, for instance, and I might do when I play trumpet. So the singing for me is really or like most of it is coming from the Middle Eastern side.
Traditional music, traditional singers.
Yeah, traditional singers. And it's not even that it's not that I sing and I think about Fairuz or Kulthum or Abdul Wahab or one of the Farid Al Atras. I'm just naming some of kind of
Or
the great singers.
or even Milton Nascimento.
Yes, because it's something that I really grew up around. So it's something
Mm,
that I know is a form of expression, and it's not like I was this. I don't come from a family choir or anything like that. It kind of it served a different purpose, and it's kind of like, and even in the way that I sing, I'm pursuing I feel like I'm pursuing music itself. You know what I mean? It's kind of like when I compose, I often play piano and sing.
hmm.
And I think that sort of thing of when you hear something in your mind and then you try to express it, that's the thing that I think I'm doing. And that's what I'm trying to do on the horn as well.
Nice. Just a question that going to a place that I didn't really think I would go in advance of this conversation, but all of the singers that you mentioned are from various Arabic traditions. Do you have any comment about that observation?
I actually live in New York, but I grew up in Jaffa, in Tel Aviv, in Jaffa. And it's hard. How can I say this? Identities in the Middle East are very complex,
Well said.
and I think I'm probably for a lot of listeners that aren't from the Middle East, it might sound surprising, but I come from what is called a Mizrahi Jewish family.
Hmm.
So my father's family are from the Emirate of Bukhara, which was an emirate that nowadays is split between the countries of Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, and the small part of Afghanistan,
Mm.
which is actually where my grandmother was and her family were from the city of Balkh. That's the city was made famous by the great poet and philosopher Rumi.
Hmm.
So it's a city with a mystic tradition that also was carried with my family. My great grandfather was a Kabbalist mystic rabbi, and is coming from a lineage of 7 generations of mystic Kabbalist rabbis. And I grew up in a Sephardic synagogue. So this is, with Jewish families that are from the Middle East, from the greater Middle East, this North Africa, Iraq, Egypt, Lebanon, and on and on. So the music is shared by all faiths, or at least as there are variations, uh, but at the end of the day, whether you are Jewish or Christian or Muslim or Druze or Alawite or anything from the Middle East, the music that um, one would sing their prayers is within this musical vocabulary of makamat.
Hmm.
So
That's
that's
great.
my long-winded answer.
As they
And
say,
very
we all drink from the same well.
yes, yes,
That's beautiful.
that's
That's really great. Wow. Thank you for that, for sharing that.
yeah, with pleasure.
You sent me some earlier things, this piece called Tangerines. I love it. I don't know as much about it, but I'll play a little bit and maybe we'll talk. Beautiful piece. Love it. Comes from an earlier album, yeah?
Yeah, this is from my album called Boomerang. This is Michael King on piano.
Hmm.
Um, and this is actually, I wrote this when I was studying at the New School.
I was going to
Uh,
ask you a little bit about that, more in the context of your full trajectory. But yeah, so you wrote this at the New School, and that's I think where I first heard you some
mm,
years ago. And so this wasn't your first album though, Boomerangs.
no, this is my second album. Um, yeah, I wrote this. Um, I remember there was one night I went to this is maybe I guess it must have been maybe even my first year at the New School or so. And I went one night with a friend of mine called Naka, and she took me to eat ramen. It's the first time that I've ever had ramen, and it was a winter night in New York. It was cold. We had this delicious warm soup that I have never tried before.
Mm,
And after we went back, I think to school to grab our instrument or whatever and go home, and I just sat at the piano and started to play this figure,
great,
uh, inspired by the warmth of the soup and the coldness outside,
great.
and uh, and
So
that's
you
why
were you were noodling. Sorry,
I
sorry.
think I went. That's perfect.
That's
Yeah.
good. Yeah, soup song. Oh, that's great. And I mean, I teach at the New School currently, and your presence is still felt there. And so it's so many great creative people have come through the New School and still are. So that's a beautiful part of where you've been. I'm wondering what's I know you always have a million projects going on. What's the next thing that we can expect to hear
That's a good question. I mean, right now we're about to go on the road with
with this Arba album? So
yeah.
everybody can go to Greenleaf Music or to itamarborochov.com and see the tour dates and find out where things are happening. But you're playing kind of it's not just in the greater Middle East and Detroit. It's kind of all around the world, right?
Yeah, we're going to play in Europe a bunch. We're playing in New York at Joe's Pub
Great.
in November. Um, and um, and yeah, I'm always composing. I'm composing more music, and I think probably once I'll have a little bit of time off from the road, I'll start gearing towards recording some more music or some of the music that I'm writing nowadays.
Yeah. Yeah, I noticed that you're recording in Brooklyn, and it's kind of cool. It's a great sounding album. So
Eh,
thanks. So
Yeah.
I thank you so much for making the time. But I wanted to go out with, I guess it's an even older track called "All You Shining Stars." Beautiful thing with strings that you must have wrote some time ago, right?
So no, this is actually more recent. This is not my composition. This is a composition by a great composer called Shannon Estreicher.
Uh-huh.
He wrote this three movement piece for myself on trumpet and a string ensemble. And we are going to listen, I think, to the first movement
Yeah.
called All You Shining Stars.
Wow. No, I love it. I'll play it. We'll go out with that. And I'm going to make you do an extra with me where we talk about somebody else's music. So everybody come and subscribe so you can tune in and hear what Itamar has to say. But I just wanted to say thank you, and I love the music, and I'm going to be practicing more trumpet with the inspiration that you give us with your music, Itamar.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to this podcast from Greenleaf Music. We appreciate your ears. Come and visit us at greenleafmusic.com to subscribe and get all the music that we do. And thanks to Itamar.